of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I would like to call this public meeting to order, public hearing on proposed local law regulating and permitting the placement and use of recreational vehicles as temporary residences on residential properties. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom in accordance with the New York State Senate Bill S5001, allowing local governing bodies to hold meetings remotely. A copy of the audio recording of this hearing and subsequent meeting will be posted by Declan Radio to remain compliant with open meeting laws. As there are people both in person and remotely, we need to make a record of all who are present at this meeting. Everyone who would like to make a comment will be able to do so. We ask that your comments are directed to the law in question and not to a specific person. As you are called upon, we ask that you state your name and where you're from for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes to ensure that everyone will have adequate time and opportunity to speak. Before we open up the meeting comments, I would like to introduce the board for those of you who don't know us. I'm Mayor Jeanette Barrett. To my left is Trustee Jim Rumsey, Mark Doniker, and Rebecca Smith. Unfortunately, Cindy Rumsey could not be here. Her brother passed away this week. So our thoughts and prayers are with the Rumsey family. And we also have our Code Enforcement Officer, Rick Rumsey, at the far end there, and then our Clerk Treasurer, Crystal O'Brien, and our Deputy Clerk Treasurer, Tracy Marshall, and our DPW Superintendent, Roger Blanchard. Okay. So I would like to provide some background for the proposed law under discussion and to clear up some possible misunderstandings. We've provided copies of Local Law Number 2 of 1980, a portion of the Land Use Code of March 2001 that was approved in 2001, and the proposed draft of local law that we are hearing public comments on today. For those participating remotely, I will be sharing those in Zoom. So Crystal, ahead of time, if we can facilitate the share function. Okay. So our code enforcement officer received a number of questions regarding the use of an RV trailer and/or trailer on private property where construction is planned and ongoing. These come in quite often. And in addition, he had received some questions regarding the use of RVs, trailers on commercial property. These questions were the impetus for our review of the laws and land use codes in the village of Speculator. There are areas within the land use code that permit the use of RVs and trailers, provided that there are less than 5 in use as temporary residences, as per the regulations of the New York State Department of Health. I confirmed this with District Director Kristen Sayers last week. These areas include properties zoned residential resort, residential countryside, and commercial. In Local Law Number 2, if I can post that. Okay.
We'll go on.
If you could mute, please. Sure. For those of you on Zoom, if you could mute until you're called upon. Thank you. I'm sorry, these laws are pretty old, so it's a little hard to see. But in Local Law Number 2, this is a local law regulating and permitting the placement and use of tents or mobile homes as temporary residences. In this law, mobile homes are broadly defined to include any vehicle or similar portable structure titled or registered as a vehicle, mounted or designed for mounting on wheels, used or intended for use or dwelling purposes. So it would include an RV as we know it today, but was not popularized at the time. Under the regulations, if you look at section 3, a permit is required. Is this the right one? Section 3. Yeah, it shall be unlawful. It shall be unlawful to place a tent or mobile home at any place in the village of Speculator on any privately owned real property in the village of Speculator and to use the same as temporary residence within 500 feet of a building of dwelling for more than 3 days without first obtaining a permit from the village clerk, mayor, or member of the Board of Trustees. Before any such permit shall be issued, satisfactory proof must be submitted that arrangements have been made for sewage on the property, garbage and refuse disposal, a potable water supply on the property, as well as fire protection. And then it goes on to state the permitting at $3 a day for a total of 14 days, not transferable. And on the permit is required the property owner, the tent and mobile home owner, the number, names, and addresses of all persons residing in the said tent. And the property owner will be held liable for securing all permits. Only one permit to be issued per taxable parcel per applicable permits. In addition, there are regulations in the village's land use code. So the land use code was approved in 2001. These were filed in accordance with New York State law in March of 2001. According to the board minutes at the time that are on record, it was approved by the Board of Trustees following a public hearing that no one attended. It did not specify what those changes were from prior land use codes. This land use code refers to local law number 2. However, the language is even more restrictive. So in part 4, now I have to see where I can search. I have to go down to page 121, so bear with me. I should be able to search. It's my page 121. For those of you, you're looking at 4-16, right? So 4-16, under zoning regulations, Article 3, applications of regulations, section 13, additional lot and building location regulations. And if you go down to section G, as in good, it says, no house trailers, mobile homes, travel trailers may be temporarily stored on any private property, provided that such vehicles shall not be stored in any front yard, shall not be used for any purpose. No more than 1 unit per parcel, except as permit as a commercial enterprise in a commercial business district or as permitted in paragraph 2 or paragraph 3 of this section. The property owner needs to notify the clerk with placement of the vehicle, etc. Said vehicle shall be removed from the premises within a 10-month period. So there's no storage after 10 months of recreational vehicles on private property. And then in addition to that, it allows for a period of 2 or more consecutive years, that another issue. So there's minor adjustments there. So in point 3, it says that the Board of Trustees may issue a permit by resolution to a property owner to store more than one, and that goes through that business. And then for vehicles, including vans, semi-trailers, trucks, truck bodies, house trailers, mobile homes, etc., shall not be placed, stored, and or used in any district within the village of Speculator, except as provided in part 2 of the land use code and part 4 of the land use code of local law number 2. Except that in a commercial business district, a bona fide service station, motor vehicle repair station licensed by the state of New York, heavy equipment business, a business that sells services or repairs such units or consistently uses these units in the furtherance of business may be exempt. And then we came across, when Rick and I were going through general codes, we came across yet another law, local law number 2 of 2003, so 2 years after the general code was put together, that allows recreational campsites in commercial business areas after review and approval by the planning board. And this was done for McCarthy property that is across from Speculator Inn. So plans were drawn up for a recreational campsite that have not materialized. But that was the rationale for doing that according to the minutes of the Board of Trustees at that time. So the board researched other local regulations of nearby towns in the North Country before drafting the current proposed law that would first allow the use of RVs on private property for limited periods of time. In the current draft law, it's stated 15 days. However, the aggregate amount of time is not specified. So that doesn't necessarily limit you to 1 2-week period. It does allow for the storage of RVs on private property, which the current laws do not permit. It also allows for extended use of RVs on private property for 6 months where there is a building permit and water and sewer access for a home under construction with renewals if needed, so long as they have a building permit. So I just wanted to clear that up and give you some background and perspective. So I will now open it up for public comments. Please stand and state your name and where you're from. Please direct your comments to pertaining to the law, and each person will have up to 5 minutes. And Crystal, I'll have you do the people in Zoom. So whoever would like to be first.
So my name's Tammy Guerin. I own Timberline Cafe, and we own a travel trailer. It's been on our property since we bought that in 2013. Occasionally our kids come up, they do use it. So if I understand this law correctly, I now have to get a permit if they want to come up and visit and stay in the camper.
If we adhere to the regulations that are on file, yes.
And does this new law change that in some way?
No, but it extends the use of it. So under the current law, you would not be able to store the trailer on your property. So you would have been in violation for the last 7 years. So, well, it's more than 7 years. Under the current law.
So under the current law, no one can have their travel trailer parked on their property?
That's the code. So we're trying to update that.
So under the new law, I would be able to keep it parked there?
Yes.
Okay, that's as it always should have been. It's my property, it's my trailer. Am I to understand that I need to get a permit when my kids came up to spend a week with us?
According to the laws at present, yes. According to the draft law, and again, it's draft, it doesn't mean it gets voted in today. That's why we have public hearings. So according to the draft law, yes, that would require a permit for up to 15 days.
That's nonsense.
Agreed.
Just, excuse me, we're doing one at a time and we're directing comments to the law. So,
Okay, so
that's noted.
specifically, I don't feel like I should have to come and get a permit for my kids to visit me and use the camper that we have parked in our yard. They never use the bathroom in that camper. We have a bathroom in the building that's accessible to them. And so there's no issue with garbage or waste or any of that sort of thing. And I object to having to get a permit to have company.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Next.
Sure.
My name is Michael Fuhr. I am a property owner in town. So one of my big points with this law is that the 3-day minimum has been taken out and also the 500-foot exemption. My property, which I own, is over 75 acres. I cannot take a binocular and see another house if I'm staying on my property lines. And yet you're telling me that now under this new law that I was not under the old law because I had a 500-foot exemption. You are now telling me that I have to now fall under all of these rules. I'm not allowed to use my property as I saw fit when I bought it 3 years ago. And now you are changing this law to then now put me in violation for these permits. My back lot was exempt before, and now I'm getting thrown into the new law. Why?
So,
Trailer, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
So
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
asking-
and I'm only allowed one. So my entire 75 acres, which I've had discussions with certain people in this room, you're telling me that I can only have a single house, one RV on that entire 75-acre lot. That's ridiculous. Like the old law, if you go from the road and you go back to my lot, you don't even get to my property line before you're 500 feet from a building of premise. I'm 1,200 feet from a nearest home. And you're telling me that I can't have an RV there?
we're not, so again, this is not,
I have a question.
if I
Why
can just,
5 minutes?
if
I
I
have
can,
5 minutes.
you will still
And
have
no,
your 5
I
minutes.
have a question first, Ms. Jeanette. Why was the 500-foot rule taken out? Was that even considered or thought of with large parcel owners in this land? Because in this township, there are many parcels which are more than 500 feet from homes, and a lot of us have the ability to actually use our property the way that we see fit, and that is being taken away from us. I have the ability on my property to have friends come and visit, which I do have. I have the ability to have friends come and stay for the summer if I want, because that was in the old law and you are now taking that from me. I am not okay with that as a property owner in this town. I'm not okay with that as someone who owns property where I was fully in my rights under the old law, and now that is being taken away.
Thank you for raising your point.
Yes. The other thing is, in this old law, which was already brought up in this meeting, fire, garbage, refuge, sewer, and water, you provide that already as a town or as a village. You provide water and sewer, and most properties are hooked up to it. That's not an issue. Garbage is provided by the speculator town. That's not an issue. And fire safety, we have a volunteer fire department and fire extinguishers or fire hydrants all the way down our roads. That's not an issue. This law is supposed to make our town look beautiful. It's supposed to make it feel better. It's supposed to make it look nice. Yet this law is looking at residential properties. Yet 60% of the properties touching Route 8 and Route 30 are commercial, which means this law does nothing to make our roads look better. It does absolutely nothing because all the RV and residential properties are down Elm Lake Road and off the main road. So this law does nothing to actually effectively do anything for our town and what you're trying to intend on doing. I don't understand how you went from the old law to this law and you think that you guys can take our rights away from our property ownership.
This is not, so I would like to say again, comments should be directed to the law and not personal attacks.
The new law, this is not a personal attack. I'm attacking the law of the fact that the old law was written. It was self-enforcing. It had setbacks. It says you can't have anything from 75 feet from the center line of the road. That means that most properties on Route 30 aren't able to have RVs under the old law already. The 500-foot setback means that some properties can have RVs. And as the town gets developed or subdivided or built up over the next 100 years, this law would naturally take effect. Why are we not letting it take effect as they wrote in the 1980s, yet we have to come here and have to remake it and put more restrictions upon it? This is more restrictive, this law, than the old law. And that's a comment about the law, not any person in this room.
Thank you.
May I comment?
Yes.
The intent, when asked to review the law, the 1980 law, was to update it based on what is acceptable in other communities locally. We thought we did that, and we, being myself and Cindy Rumsey, we thought we did that and made it more generous and more liberal and less restrictive. Now you're saying, or you're interpreting it as being more restrictive. The 1980 law, I think, was more restrictive.
Was the Indian Lake law looked up where there's a 180-day permit available where you can have a trailer camp available in there where I can fill out a permit? I can have people for 180 days on my property through the summer between the month of May 1st and October 31st. Was that law looked at as our neighboring town?
We did not look at that law. Thank you.
I would like to say that,
If you would state your name again, because this is an audio recording.
okay, sorry, Tammy Guerin, still the owner of Timberline Cafe. I feel like if you force me to pay for a permit to have a company, that is nothing but a money grab. It's a straight money grab. I should be able to have my company when I want to have my company, as should anybody in this room. Are you gonna start charging people who have somebody stay in their spare room? No. That's essentially our spare room, that camper on our property. And that's what we use it for. And I should not have to pay a fee to have company.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name's William Costello. I agree with you 100%, Tammy. Because I have my parents that come up. I have a trailer that parks in my driveway next to my other lot behind our house. My parents come up, they stay in the trailer. I provide them water, but not the sewer. So when I get done, they get done using the trailer, I drain the water. I take it over to Moffitt's Beach, pay their fee to dump it and all that stuff, which I think the village should look into, maybe a nice drop area for paying revenue off that. So I agree with Tammy. There's no way we should be paying for this. The tax, I think it's a tax against trailers right now.
So if I would comment again, the point is taken for the restrictions for the 500-foot setback, looking at other towns. What it does allow is it does allow for RV storage on the property and for use of travel trailers during building, which was not permitted before. To your point of village dumping, that has been looked at a number of times over the last several years. The Village of Speculator has asked DEC about getting a permit for a dumping site at the wastewater treatment plant. DEC has said no, based on our plant setup and the current Speedies permit allowing up to 300,000 gallons of wastewater to be processed per day. And in evaluating this option, it was also found to be cost prohibitive due to the extra processing required in introducing wastewater without the benefit of prior aeration that travels through the pipes, and the requirement of having the dumping station manned during hours of operation, that someone would have to be there to monitor. However, this does not prevent a commercial entity from establishing a dumping station. So in that case, something farther out would be aerated by the time it would get to the wastewater treatment plant.
Hi, my name
Yes.
is Rachel Pierre. I am a resident and a business owner here in town. I clean Airbnbs for a living. There are over 100 Airbnbs in this area, yet short-term housing or long-term housing or any housing, specifically within the summer months, is a huge struggle for myself included. So I find myself cleaning other people's homes, yet not really having a place to call home myself. Now, I understand that we do have some people in town who are doing really great work of building apartments for full-time living and things like that. However, short-term summer housing is something that is essential to a location like this where we get over 10,000 people in a weekend compared to our about 800 people, you know, hanging out here. So I was wondering if utilizing trailers as short-term housing to prevent a housing issue, to allow more workers to come up. I can't find other employees, I can't expand, I can't grow at all, but there's a huge market out there, right within, not even leaving Speculator, going into like Pleasant or Wells, or Pasico. So my question was short-term summer housing looked into as utilizing trailers to be able to bring short-term workers up here for our summers to be able to then progress the town economically, as well as providing people like myself, small-term business owners. I've heard many stories from other business owners in town about how they can never find summer employees because there is nowhere for them to live. Also, with the new housing that is being developed and brought up, the rent to payment ratio is pretty steep. Most people in town make about $14.60 an hour, give or take, at Charlie John's or Mountain Market, places like that, with rent over $900. You're, before taxes are taken out, these people are bringing home $2,200. Before taxes are taken out, before insurance is taken out, before anything else, then expected to pay $950 in rent, plus utilities. You're looking at over $1,000 for someone to live who's only making about take home a little less than $2,000. So was utilizing trailers in an appropriate manner to bring e-commerce to Speculator considered as a potential short-term housing dilemma, instead of just saying, let's all go into, you know, houses that cost $950 a month plus utilities. But, well, that aren't even developed yet. And that's the other thing, we don't even have them yet, they're just being developed now. When that isn't an affordable option for most people, making it difficult for people to actually expand the businesses and bring more people to town.
Okay, so regarding, excuse me?
No, I was asking her, she asked the question.
Oh, so to address your point, municipalities don't regulate housing. We don't regulate or control housing per se to provide that. Businesses, residents are free to come up with schemes to do that. And, you know, it's our job to make sure that, you know, there's the safety and the trash pickup and, you know, all that stuff is in place. With your point to seasonal workers, it's a huge problem, not only here, but throughout the Adirondacks. And to that end, I've been informed by and had discussions with the IDA and a private investor who are working to create workforce housing on Novacell. So they're looking to put up 6 units initially, and with the potential to expand up to 12 units.
And do you know how much these units are per month?
That I don't know, but they are talking about working with local businesses to have the housing as part of their pay.
So then you're basically creating work camps so that people's pay are getting docked so that they can afford to live. And it's all controlled
I am-
by the business owners who are then controlling the rent, controlling the pay, controlling everything where, you know, I think that the RV law should be considered and re-looked at to then allow and use the municipality to allow for RVs and trailers and people to utilize those for the summer on their properties, allowing people to have commercial areas to house their workers on their land for a smaller fee so that they can, you know, be able to make it, because under both laws at this point, anyone with a commercial property still can't have someone living in their RV for the summer as a place to subside and live. And as Michael mentioned, the 500-foot rule, we could have been able to allow for people to come stay on our land, work for the summer, which we have had done. I could have hired more employees.
No, actually, sorry, we have employees who would come up this summer.
Yeah.
This law will disallow us from growing
Yeah.
businesses, flat out.
Absolutely.
We have people who come up and work for us. They live in RVs, they will come for 180 days and leave, and this law is going to disallow us from growing our businesses in town. That is a huge problem for us.
And it does prevent, like, because even if we have our people, anyone else we could have invited to work at places such as Timberline, I mean, and Logan's Oak, any of these locations no longer can even come to even really vacation here, nonetheless work and put money into the economy, produce, you know, a livable place.
Okay, so just to be clear, just because there is a draft law under discussion doesn't mean it gets passed,
Sure.
right? So just so that we're very clear,
Yes.
people are raising some excellent feedback and excellent inputs that will be taken into consideration. Things will be revised, and nothing gets passed without a public hearing. We don't do things in secret. We don't ramrod things through, because we serve the village of Speculator, not only those who have RVs and use RVs, but those who don't as well.
And
So
my question is, why is the municipality looking to serve the village of Speculator by bringing and allowing RV usage as people see fit, since we do get water, sewer, trash, and volunteer ambulance corps and things like that to continue to expand and grow the community?
So if I can just clarify that, when it talks about sewage, it's where that sewage is being dumped, not the fact that the village of Speculator has a wastewater treatment plant. When it talks about refuse, that refuse is contained and put out to the curb, to the street to get picked up. That's not always a given. So that's the reason why those things were put in here.
Sure.
It's not that we don't have services. And someone from SVAC, and I am a member of SVAC, has pointed out safety concerns, because if you have a number of trailers on a piece of land, or even somewhere unmarked, we have a hard enough time trying to find residences because they're not marked properly. So if someone calls and says, I'm in a trailer on Elm Lake Road, which trailer is it? So, and to say, oh, that doesn't happen, it does happen, because we've been called to parking lots. You know, I'm in the RV and you get there and there are 3 or 4 RVs. And so now you're knocking on doors looking for the person who's having the heart attack. So just to clarify what that means. So this is a time to share your input.
But I still haven't had my question answered, is why isn't the municipality and the board looking into ways to allow for short-term housing in RVs and such, to then be able to do that instead of restricting it?
So these are comments about this law. And if you wish to propose something for your property that goes into.
No, this is a question in general. Why isn't the board looking into utilizing RVs as summer short-term housing potential options, which creates more housing, limits housing costs and things like that? And why is it being put on the residents and the commercial owners, the business owners? And why isn't it in this opportunity, while we're making an RV law, utilizing the municipality to then create a better law so that we will be able to expand as a whole, as a community and a village, instead of just putting it on the people to be able to figure out how to work within the laws to be able to do that?
The village does not own property that we would.
Yes, I know that, but what I'm saying is, why are we creating a law that allows for summer usage of RVs for short-term housing? Why isn't the municipality and the board looking into that instead of restricting it and putting that responsibility on us as the residents or the business owners who have to then try to figure out how to weasel our way in, to figure out how to make sure we're abiding by the law, but still having, because like this law right now that's being drafted wouldn't even allow me to bring in an employee for the summer that doesn't have a residence. So why isn't the municipality, who's supposed to be representing the people and growing the village, looking into ways to do that and creating better setbacks and enforcement laws, instead of just creating an entire new law that kind of says, oh, it's on the responsibility of the landowners and the business owners to figure it out? Why isn't the municipality doing that, since you are the ones who are supposed to be helping us grow and expand the
If you
village?
would like to propose a law, if you would like to propose a law that would address those things, we would be very happy to.
But that's what we're trying to do, because this isn't.
No, we're not, this is not, well, this session here is for the draft law. And what you're proposing is something else.
No, I'm asking why you guys as a whole aren't making a better law so that the property owners and the business owners don't have to figure out how to put RVs on their lots, and making better setbacks with better, like, utilizing a better time frame, things like that. I am talking directly about this law. This law restricts me from hiring an employee, bringing them onto my lot, and saying, hey, you have a job for the summer, here's your housing situation, blah, blah, blah. Why is the municipality looking for ways, instead of saying, let someone else build houses and things like that, or figure out how to have affordable housing? Why is the municipality creating an RV law that allows for that, with better setbacks and easements and enforceability laws, so that we are able to then house people for the summer to expand our businesses?
All right, thank you.
I think
So-
that's wonderful that you bring up those points, and it's something we definitely have to consider. But please understand that the 1980 law was even worse. Was considerably
I
worse.
was free.
And
I was freely
unenforced.
allowed to do this under the old law, though.
Was that?
I'm freely allowed under the old law to do exactly what she's saying on my personal property. I don't know about everyone else in their specific situations, but for me specifically, what she's saying, I'm legally allowed to do under the current law that is currently on the books and is currently available. I right now can live on an RV on my 75 acres, and I do not have to ask for a permit right now. What you're telling me is I do, and I can only have one. So somehow I'm going from essentially the ability to do what I want with my land that I own and pay taxes on, and build my business and grow how I need to grow. And what you're doing over here is saying, no, you need to fill out a permit, you're only gonna have one RV. That means that even my sister can't have an RV on the property with me. That's ridiculous. Don't take my rights away.
Is there anyone on the Zoom who would like to make a comment? Has anyone raised hands or?
I would like to. Bobby Hoover.
Yes, Bobby.
Bobby Hoover. Yes, I just don't agree with charging people to have, I mean, my family has outgrown my house during their vacations and holidays, and they love coming here. And I usually have a camper in my driveway, and it's only used for sleeping. I mean, we all eat together, we all, you know, everybody takes showers in the house and everything, and the village gets the money in the water and sewer tax for that. I don't understand why we would have to, oh, you know, 3 days are up, I gotta go get a permit, or no. It's my property, I pay taxes. I don't think I should be charged to have company come and stay on my property. I do agree with others that maybe other areas could be developed for RVs, but that's always been an issue. And that's a private business. I mean, sure, I'd welcome anybody in the village who would love to open an RV park like we did with Mr. McCarthy. it's sad he's not utilizing it, but no, but I don't want to be walking down Route 30 to go to the beach and be just overwhelmed with campers at the curbs. But like I said, it's just that my house, I've outgrown, my family has outgrown my house for when they want to come and visit. So I don't think they should be charged for that.
Okay,
And
thank you.
And another point I would like to make while I'm here, and there's so many people here. This is the village of Speculator. It is not a town. And I think the people in the village are very proud of the fact that it is a village. And I just get so upset that people just keep saying the town of Speculator. We are the village of Speculator in the town of Lake Pleasant.
My apologies.
Thank you.
Point well taken, Bobby.
My apologies.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I had to say.
All right, thank you, Bobby. Is there anyone else on Zoom with a question? Yes, Mr. Day,
Okay,
Alan Day, yes?
I have property off of South Shore Road. I do not have participation in a water supply or a septic system through the village. So my water supply is from my well and my septic system provides what's needed for my property. As I read this law, if my son and a family wanted to come to my property for 2.5 weeks, I would have to provide a mechanism for them using my septic system. I would have to provide a mechanism for them using my water supply, when instead they simply come into our house and use our bathroom and they use our water supply there. I understand the statement that's been made previously that this law is less restrictive than what had been in the past. That's the right direction, but you should continue to be less restrictive and allow people to use their property without undue restrictions imposed upon them by the municipality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone present here who has a comment?
I'm gonna take it in a different direction.
If you would state your name and where you're from.
Speculator in Lake Pleasant. I have questions, but I have more of a statement, which involves a lot of questions. Fully loaded handgun is only dangerous to the health, safety, and welfare of people in their hands of a criminal. But in the hands of a responsible person, it's quite harmless. A handgun is a weapon capable of harming and killing. That's why we regulate the sale of a pistol, as it should be. An RV is not a weapon. An RV and any non-moving RV with a fully loaded septic rainwater system, full of garbage cans on a residential lot is incapable of harming anybody. Does not need any regulation or proper use. New laws will not provide any additional protection. Most RV owners are responsible and are very familiar with their operating systems. They understand the gray water, septic, potable water systems. They're familiar with the mechanical components to this moving home and know how to pull with a proper vehicle, how to maneuver it, including backing up, and how to store when not in use. Why should the village be able to tell the owner how to use their RV as a temporary residence? Why should you limit the use of the RV on his own property? An RV or camping trailer on a residential property being used as temporary housing does not create the trailer park everyone dreads, which has been said to me before. I'm surprised and disappointed with this proposed law restricting and regulating RVs in the village, which is yet another restriction on our freedoms. An RV sitting on a residential property being used as a temporary housing does not present any danger to the community and doesn't need regulation, monitoring, and proposed new and improved laws imposed on it by the village. Instead of restricting their use, we should be expanding their use in light of the current affordable seasonal housing shortage and allowing the taxpayers, owners, the freedom to use the RVs as they wish on their own property. The provided solution to this apparent problem with RVs in the village is invasive overbearing of the property rights of the taxpayers. The village wants to tell us what we can or not do with our land in the name of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Property owners should be able to use their land as they wish regarding RV usage at their homes without having been to the village. What causes new legislation to regulate RV usage in residential properties? You answered a few, Jeanette. What's the problem with using an RV as a temporary residence without the government getting involved? Nosy neighbors that don't like temporary residents next door? Nosy neighbors that trespass on your property to inspect the RV usage? RV owners spewing raw sewage and gray water onto the streets? Very risky. How widespread? RV owners dumping raw sewage on their property. Why would they do this to their property? They wouldn't. Are the violators of RV misuse that widespread that you have to punish all of us RV users and owners that use them on their property? Why punish all for the misuse of the few? Or are there that many that are misusing it? Please let me know how many tickets have been issued and followed up with penalties. Why create new laws that are restrictive? Why don't you punish the current people that are breaking law and leave the others alone? If the problem is as widespread as the village board might think, it may be a full-time job collecting permits, money, getting them approved and enforcing them. Sounds like a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of money. I'm not sure the problem is that widespread that caused this interest in this new legislation. Laws and restrictions never get rescinded. They never go away. Seems that we have too many already, many of which cannot be enforced. I don't want any more. I'd like to comment on a few of the provisions. The 15-day limit on residential properties doesn't say renewal. The commercial says renewal. This does not mention a renewal. So you're only allowed to use your house, your trailer or RV on your property once for 15 days.
It does not mention an aggregate.
Yeah, it doesn't, I know. One property, one permit, so one size fits all. Is a 1 acre treated like 50? A lot of village properties over 5 acres. So it sounds restrictive and prejudicial to large plots. Now, we have to have a plan that we have to submit sewage, water, and household waste removal. Please, regarding sewage, RV owners have been taking care of sewage for as long as they've owned the RV. They always did. What RV owner wants to pour sewage on his own property? It's an RV, it's self-contained. Why do you need a plan for water? Is water required in the RV for a permit? No water, no permit? Garbage? That's already taken care of. You have to tell us we have to have tightly fitting lids. We really have to have a plan for all these things to submit in writing, to have permission to use our own property. This sounds like kindergarten to me. I would assume that many of the RV residents will use the indoor facilities most of the time and the RV equipment during the evening, just like people at public campgrounds. They use the public restrooms and showers in addition to the RV's equipment. The load on the RV is minimal, and as with RV use, the owners know how to take care of the sewage in a proper fashion. Where that is, I don't know. Now, you want the names, addresses, phone numbers of the residents. Please. What would this do to help protect health, safety, and welfare of our community? I think the government's sticking their nose where it shouldn't be. It's not needed. Do we ask this information for people in Airbnbs? No, we don't. It might soon. The new laws do not protect the community from improperly disposed of trash, refuge, and sewage. The health, safety, and welfare of the community is not in danger without these new laws and won't be safer with them. So we don't need them. Conclusion, I think a property owner should have the right to have an RV on his property without having to ask the government permission every time their friends or family pop in and need a place to stay. They should have to limit the amount of time one can stay temporarily. They should not have to provide all the non-essential required information about the residents. For what reason? Finally, permanent residence on the property should not be a requirement for temporary use of the RV on a piece of vacant land. One RV does not make an RV park. I think the village should take a positive approach to the problem, and instead of restricting or regulating the use of RVs, should take a proactive approach to solve the problem that encourages the use of RVs in the village for the sake of us taxpaying dollar owners. We're lucky to have a public sewer system, which has been underutilized for 40 years or more. I worked there for 5 years. Maybe it's up to capacity now. I don't think there's a lot of new houses on the system. It could be used in a solution of RV waste. Public waste disposal, I think Jeanette said it was too expensive. The DEC dumps all of their stuff in over at the Speculator end, at the pump station. So that gives it time to go from the pump station and get diluted and go to the, go to the wastewater plant. We also have an excellent water system. RVs need water and waste removal. Why not use them to promote Speculator and create an RV friendly tourism destination? Thanks for your time.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
There are one or two
Yeah,
points.
there is, DEC does not dump sewage on our property. If you think about Moffett Beach, DEC takes care of that, that's their property, but they don't come here and dump.
They don't anymore, because when I worked there, they did.
They don't change it then.
They don't go to the pump station by the end.
No, and there's a campground in Arietta that asked DEC if they could dump into the Speculator system, and DEC said no. So, and there are, so if you're not aware, the New York State Department of Health also has regulations regarding the number of RVs. So they don't allow anything 5 or more is considered a campground, and they have their whole set of regulations. So, yeah, so I just want people aware of that aspect. So, okay, is there anyone else on the line who has questions or comments, not questions, comments? No one else? Okay, is anyone else speaking? Yeah,
Chris Fuhrer, I own property here in Speculator. In the prior law,
Mhm.
the 80 law, you talk about using tents, right? And I'm gonna kind of talk about something that's gonna be more restrictive, if you think about it. We're talking about water, sewer, health, safety, welfare issues. RVs are self-contained, as Dean said, completely self-contained. People are responsible. They know how to use them. We go down to Daytona every year. We never pump our tank because we don't use it that well. To the point where we need to pump it. We have 7 people. This new law, and again, I'm going to kind of go against really what I want to say, but I just want to make a point with this. You're not regulating tents. Where do people in tents going to go to the bathroom? Because you're not regulating them. So they can go anywhere within the village, as many as can be, on any property, with no consideration for the health, safety, and welfare. So I think that this presented law needs to go back into subcommittee, needs to be thoroughly discussed again with members of the public that have interest in this, and then maybe possibly present it again. But what is on the table now should stay on the table and not move forward, right? Because it's not a good law. The law of 1980, while restrictive and taking rights away from landowners, had flaws. There were provisions, as Michael said, for site distances, zoning laws. It took care of some other issues. This law needs to work, and I think it should stay right where it is on that table and not go any further. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to note that this is, again, a proposed, only referenced from what has been issued in other communities without Indian Lake. Okay, but we'll look at it, but we'll examine it
About
again.
wells, there is no zoning laws in wells. Wells doesn't even have any rules on the books for RV regulated. Why don't you look at wells and just get rid of this law? I mean, that's another option. It was a point of choosing which towns that the board chose from, when we have 2 towns right next to us that also have rules.
Let me just ask the question. I understand we looked at Sylvan Beach. That was the first town that was looked at, was Sylvan Beach.
That's right.
That's not even in the Adirondacks. That's in Oswego County, I think. Right? Oneida County, right?
And we've looked at Arietta, which has a comparable
Arietta-
law.
Arietta has 1 sentence concerning RVs.
No, there's actually more than one sentence, but it allows for construction.
Yeah, but when you look at RVs, there's 1 paragraph. 1. when it talks about what we're talking, not storage. I'm not talking about storage. I'm not talking about construction, because I actually like the construction part, 180 days. If the construction part was to be put in as the law, I think we might all be happy. Right? Let me use my property for 180 days. Right? Right? I personally wouldn't have a problem coming down and telling you, I'm putting an RV on my property for 180 days. Right?
Yeah, like I could fill out a permit on May 1st that says my property will be used with an RV. You can check on May 1st to make sure that I'm fitting the rules. Don't come talk to me again for the rest of the year until next year. Right. I don't see why that's not also enough. Give the people the freedom to grow and develop the way they want.
There's a property on Elm Lake Road, right where Jeanette lives. My brother-in-law used to own the property, recently sold it. Made a nice little landing pad on it and everything else. I don't know who owns it. Couldn't care less really who owns it. But let's just say that individual lives in Virginia. Buys an RV, brings it up, puts it on the property. Because he wants to come up maybe 3-4 weekends in the summer. Guess what? He's in violation. Under this law, he's in violation.
Who's ever on Zoom, can you put yourself on mute, please?
So he's gonna now bring that trailer from Virginia up every weekend, put it on his property for 3 days and go home and drag it all the way back home. This law puts him in violation.
This proposed law. Thank you.
I even think the existing law does as well.
Yeah.
You're correct.
That shouldn't be.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah. William, going right along with
Chris Fear.
There are pieces of property in the town of Lake Pleasant. Prime example. Are they gonna follow suit? Do
Well,
they think we're right?
yeah,
Do they think we're wrong? I
Well,
know you're gonna give us the
Oh.
answers. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no.
We just blowing smoke all night here.
no,
You
we
know,
don't want to,
We were not.
yeah, no, we don't want to,
Officer-
we don't want to blow smoke. So in speaking, Rick spoke with the code enforcement officer of Lake Pleasant for family usage. No worries, you can do whatever you want. If there are other people coming on, it's 7 days and you have to move it. They are supposed to either get a permit or have the code enforcement officer view where it's parked, and then every 7 days it's moved. Did I get that right, Rick?
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. My family has 10 acres. One of my family members wants to put a travel trailer on it. You're saying I have to come here, get a permit. And what? You're talking about, I'm talking about the new, what you're providing right now for us, what you were like on the table. So you get the permit, then what?
So for 15 days, and then if there's a
15 days,
renewal,
apply for another 15 days and 15 days, 5 years.
So-
now we want to live on there. Okay.
so for part of this, there's the difference between temporary housing, transient housing, and permanent housing. And that's where DOH crosses a line for what's transient, what are RVs. There's a certain set of laws, but now when you turn it into permanent, where you're not moving it, you're keeping it, there's another set of codes and
What do you mean
enforcement,
by permanent? What's permanent?
not moving. So you're putting it,
What's permanent? Wheels off, jacked up, blocks?
On a-
There's a lot of differentiation.
not moving and in use.
It's.
So,
By rolling
I-
6 inches this way.
Well-
I'm not worried.
So there-
I'm totally not seeing it out here. Everybody knows who I am. I have, my brother-in-law has a travel trailer in my backyard. They wanted to camp at Mountains Beach. He's getting older, can't back it up and all. I said, you have a piece of property here, put it in our backyard. I bring hoses out to water and all that stuff. I dig it exactly what I said before. I take his travel trailer, dump the waste. I give the state of New York my money, all that BS. But I do things right. Now it seems like, okay, I've been doing it wrong. I just.
Yeah. When was the last time this law was enforced?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
was the last time that the 1980 law was actually enforced? Because 7 years, there's been one sitting in the.
10 years.
Oh, 10 years, sorry, 10 years sitting in the timberline. This never came up, and all of a sudden this year, we're still sitting here
But
talking about
something
an RV
triggered
law.
this. Something triggered in the board to look into this.
To care enough to.
I don't
So-
know what it is, but something triggered.
So, right, so as I mentioned earlier, there were contacts with the code enforcement officer about RVs being used on businesses, and
Were there any violations found upon that? Yes or no?
no, but we still
Those are
looked into
opinions and
the,
assumptions then. They are not violations. They are people's opinions and assumptions, which we're sitting here because of people's opinions and assumptions then. That's why we're sitting here then. That's what you're telling us.
We're sitting here
Excuse me.
because one or two people didn't
No.
like what they saw,
no,
which
excuse me.
impacts the entire community. Jeanette, we know what happened.
We know that people.
We
people
know that
complain.
people
People
complain.
complain. Now we're sitting here because of assumptions and opinions. There is not, when was the last violation?
Okay,
When, can the town please respond? When was the last violation of this law?
we will have to get back to you on that. Rick, I don't have a list of violations with me right
That should
now.
have been looked up when
So-
you were looking at this law when you first brought it up. Yeah, they should-
Excuse me,
That's a very important question.
Rick,
Rick Rumsey, Code Enforcement Officer, Zoning Officer, Village Speculator. I live at 127 Elm Lake Road. There were, in fact, people who protested what you're doing on your property. I told them that that's a commercial property and you can do what you want. They complained that maybe there's overspray from something, and were you collecting the vapors, and they called me constantly with all, and I told them it's commercial property. They can do what they want on there, and that's it. And they got tired of calling, I guess.
Then why are we here then?
so in addition to that, we have received calls from property owners requesting the ability to use their trailer while their houses are being made.
Right.
Is
So
there
because of,
anyone in this room right now that is one of those people who violated with an assumption or an opinion? Is anyone in this room one of those people?
I don't think that matters.
I think it does, because if they're complaining and we're here because of them, we're sitting here trying to argue for our rights and freedom from people who made assumptions and opinions.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
And that's why we have a public hearing, and that's why we're gonna listen to you. So please, understand, that's the whole reason here, okay? Go ahead, Charlie.
Rick,
The complaints, they weren't complaints, they were questions. People called me and said, I'm gonna be building on this property, I wanna put my trailer here. And I said, well, according to current law, you can't. I brought this to Jeanette, to my brother, to other people, and they said, maybe we should look into this. And that's the number one thing, people who wanted to put a trailer on their property. And I had to tell them, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
And we've had people call saying, I'm in queue to buy property X. I want to do this. Can we do it? And like you said, based on the law that was from 1980, it's wrong.
Then that could have been added to the 1980 law. Instead, we're taking more restrictions upon RV usage in the town. You could have just added a 180 law to a building.
So we have-
Which could be a future conversation.
yes, so we've taken your comments and, I want to reiterate that we're doing it with good intent. That's why you have a public hearing, to have other perspectives that we don't have at all. This has been an open discussion where people can come and make comments. And if your family has come and made comments during this process. So at this time, if there are no other comments,
I have another comment. If you're going to put a law forward, regardless of how this shakes out, and a new law goes on the books, I have to agree with them that it has to be allowed for me as a business owner to put my dishwasher up in my camper, if that's what I want to do. I don't mind getting a permit for that says he can be in there for the summer. That's different than my family visiting. But I don't see any way for me to do that. I don't want to have to come every 15 days and say, yep, he's still washing my dishes. Yep, it's July, he's still in there. You know what I mean? I want something like, I don't intend to do this, but who knows? But it should be in there and it should be allowed, and I shouldn't have to come every 2 weeks and renew that permit if I'm using it for the purposes of housing an employee.
Good point.
So I would like to, I'm gonna break my own rule and throw out a question that I don't need an answer to, but the question is as well, do you write laws so that now you're checking to make sure that those are family members and temporary workers? Or are you opening up your home to continue the Airbnb business that goes against providing temporary housing for transient workers? That's, I'm not looking for a response. If you want to write something or show me something or, provide something to the board, but just to know that sometimes the way things are done can open up a larger can of worms. That there are issues right now within the village, within our area about Airbnbs, that every other property prices are going up. We're getting, young people can't come and buy homes because they're getting priced out because people are getting $200, $300, $400, $500, some, $1,000 a week or more, for their property. So what is to say, how do you have as few regulations as possible and yet prevent that happening with RVs? Because those are definite possibilities. RVs are on Airbnbs and VRBOs and so it's not an easy fix. But since this has been going on for an hour, and thank you for your patience, I would like to call this meeting to a close. And to the board, I would say that we will pull this off the table. We will not take a vote on the law this evening. We will determine whether we want to set up a subcommittee. In addition to that, we are reviewing general codes. There are discrepancies that have been raised between the various laws that are on the books and in the general code that need to be resolved. So we will consult with our attorneys to see how that should best be done and repeal laws as appropriate. Public comment is
I
over.
have a question about the subcommittee as a concerned citizen. Is this going to be a public or private subcommittee that will be relooking over this law?
Everything is always public.
That is not true. You said in the previous meeting when you set up the subcommittee, when was asked, could this be privately meeting, and it is.
Excuse me,
The previous subcommittee on this law was private. It was
No.
stated in a meeting in August.
so the subcommittee were trustees. It wasn't,
And 2 is a quorum, so they were meeting.
no, 3 is a quorum.
2 as of 2013 under, I just read it.
3 is a
I just read
quorum.
it 5 minutes ago under 2013. I just put it out.
3 is a quorum, not 2.
Can I make a petition to suggest that the council makes the next one public and includes voices from people on the community and taxpayers, instead of just having 2 people meet on there? Because I think that there are a lot of voices here who would like input, rather than going through this process, spending money on a lawyer and then having another public hearing. We might as well have a discussion, since clearly there's a lot of interested parties here.
Okay. In order for us to enact a law that would be favorable to you, okay, let me just say this. If we were not to run it through a lawyer and pay the fees that we have to do, we could be attacked by anybody that wants it, that goes to him and asks questions and stuff like this. So,
No, I'm asking you.
I mean, you can't.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't 100%. I'm the biggest fan of local housing.
No, I'm giving the example.
But
of
listen, please. For us to do it based on just one side of the street, we also.
What do you mean? I'm not asking. What I'm asking is, like, for example, in Lake Pleasant, there's a committee on Airbnbs. There are public people involved, there are taxpayers involved, there's someone who's a representative from an Airbnb who's an owner, there's someone who's against Airbnbs. I believe that someone on this board is on there.
Yes.
Why are we doing that with this law?
Because at the time, we didn't think it was necessary to do that. And based on public, I'm sorry, but
Chris, give her ground, please.
I'm sorry,
Please,
discussed
little
this
bit
with
more
us.
polite. Well, wait a minute. You didn't discuss this with everybody on the board.
No, but
You did
I had people come to my property and discuss this with me, and questions could have been asked, and they knew that I was an interested party at that point. That is very clear. I was definitely an interested party this summer when I was brought up in meetings, and Jeanette and Mr. Rumsey came to my lot to discuss with me. So they were both in my lot and discussed with me my commercial business. They knew I was an interested party, and now 3 months later, we're at a public hearing and I'm sharing these opinions. I could have shared these during a subcommittee. Anyone here could have shared them during a subcommittee, and we could have already had this discussion. That's all I'm saying. So all I'm asking is it possible for this subcommittee that, or whatever ends up you guys decide happening, can it be public? Can the public have input or at least get representation of meeting notes or agendas of it?
I don't have that answer.
Yeah, so just to extend this just a little bit longer, not every law requires a subcommittee. And so it's a judgment call going in, whether you call in people to participate, which is very difficult to get people who are willing to come and participate. I see your hand. So this is a unique situation. All right, this is a unique situation. So give us credit enough to let us take a step back. Let us see what's on our plate, evaluate all the comments that have come in and see what our next steps are. But if there is a public committee, we will reach out and ask for volunteers to come and participate. Because this is what government is supposed to be that give and take from people who put us in office and to come up with what's best for the village. So there are a number of other things that need to be addressed with community input that is very difficult to get a comprehensive plan and the local zoning codes. All of those things need to be updated. We need volunteers and interested parties who would participate in that. So if you're willing to do that, please call the clerks, leave your name and number, send me an email, mayor@villagesspeculator.com. So thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. We are going to continue on with the rest of the village meeting. You can obviously feel free to stay. This is a public meeting, but the public hearing portion is now closed.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and thank you for your input. I want you to know, this is my first time on a committee, so it's been
Okay, so if we, yeah, the meeting.
Yes, I can.
Just tell us to read the list and we'll go from there.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Thank you.
I was about to pick it up. I saw you.
Ed and Denise in the village?
They're on Echo Lake.
Yeah.
They're right on the border.
So they are or not?
No, they're in Lake Pleasant. Okay, so I call this meeting back to order. Thank you. So at this point, I would like a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes from January 9th. Any questions, any comments? Hearing none, motion carries. Based on the public hearing that we just had, are there any other public comments from those remaining? If you could state your name and where you're from. Yes. Hold on just a second. If the public can move in one direction or another, it's hard to hear. Okay, Shorty, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
I may be able to help you with Cassie Hochul on that property.
Great.
But if I do, this is what I would like to see on that property, is a Veterans Memorial Park. I talked to Harry Baker over a year ago about it, but then things got kind of thrown around. But I think that's what it would be nice for. We could put some soil in there, put some landscaping, timber, no digging whatsoever. Maybe get a little monument that you go up to Indian Lake by the school. They have a Veterans Memorial Park there. Down on North Kingsborough, in Glenville, they got a nice little memorial park down there with flowers and everything else. And sometime you get a chance, I'll take a ride down and look at it. But I think that little piece of property right there with couple of well-placed stones, give it credit for honoring our veterans who are living in these streets and stuff like that. That would be an asset to the
Thank you.
village, and I think everybody in the county would be behind it. So,
Thank you.
it's a God. I know at one time, the state said they would forget the lien that was against it. But that was back in the 80s, and everybody didn't know how bad the property was, nobody wanted to touch it. And when they were talking about forgetting the lien back in the 80s, it was a $210,000 lien, well, not in the 80s, but the early 2000s. So 210 grand, they were talking about forgetting if the village used it for the village, purpose as a park.
Okay.
And nobody wanted to go near it. So I think now we're going, what, like 48 grand over down or something, so it should be an easy thing to do.
Right. I'll take that offline with you. Thank you for your offer. Is there anybody else for public comment on Zoom? No? Okay. Public comment is now closed. Roger, would you please give your monthly report and the 5-year plan and report on fleets and roads?
Okay.
I don't have a copy of, I don't think I have an electronic. Oh, I do have an electronic. Sorry, I'm trying to share.
No, I got, last month, well, this month, it's not over yet. We're working on ski trail when we could. The weather hasn't been cooperating with us, but it's starting to turn around, so we should be starting to get the ski trail back in order. We're working on the bathrooms at the fire hall. We're in the process of working on one of them right now. We're working on a skating rink. We've been flooding that the last 3 mornings and nights. And it's coming along fairly quickly now, thank God. Garbage and recyclables. We've been cutting branches around signs and along the roads and making sure our signs are all visible. We fixed, well, we have a few potholes fixed yet, but we have fixed a couple. When we blow sidewalk as needed, sand sidewalk as needed. Next month is pretty much the same stuff. Drag the ski trail, cut the branches, plow and sand, flood skating rink, garbage and recyclables, work on the firehouse bathrooms. I got blow the sidewalks. Did I say that already?
Mm-hmm.
Tree has been working on painting the welcome sign icons that are on the welcome signs. We move snow banks and stuff with our tractor as needed because it builds up so much we have to push banks back. And we also do that with the plow sometimes, cut banks. And we've been keeping an eye on the trouble spot on the sidewalk. We've been making sure that that stays somewhat walkable, I guess I would say. And then the next 60 days is pretty much the same stuff: ski trail, sidewalks, plowing, move snow, make weep holes in the bank so if it rains, the water has someplace to go. Cut snow banks as needed, garbage and recyclables, work on icons if he's not done. Brush, potholes, and flood rink.
So, Roger, just for the record there, we have had, as you know, quite a few call-ins about the rink. And, you know, why has it taken it so long? Now, I know that there's been 45-degree weather, but if you could just comment on what conditions are.
Okay, the skating rink, when we first started and we packed the snow, you have to have weather down into the 20s, because if it's only just a little bit below freezing, the water finds a way out before it freezes because it takes it too long. So we do light coats. You can't put a lot in there because then it freezes on the top and the water finds a way out, and then there's shell ice. So we do light coats and it has it freeze on the pavement. And if it's cold, you can do it over and over and over and over because it freezes that fast. But you have to have it down into the 20s. Now, once you get a good skating rink, you can do it at 32 because you're just skimming the top and taking the skate marks out. But to get that base, you have to have like mid-20s usually.
So snow and
The
mid-20s.
snow is packed around the edge and mid-20s to get that base. Once you get your base, you're pretty good unless you get a real long extended period of warm rather than it melting on you.
So is the runoff under the snow that we have?
Yeah,
That's a, now, do we have we don't have a liner that we could put in there to cut down on the runoff?
no, that, we did a liner one year and that didn't work because until you get a lot of ice on the liner, the skates will break through the ice and cut the liner. So you have to close it and keep people off it until you get a really good amount on there.
So it
But
sounds
the way
like
we
it
do
would-
it now, you can only have a little bit of ice we can skate. You may have a bare spot that we have to mark, but as it builds up, you lose your bare spots too, so.
Okay.
The way we do it is, I mean, I've worked here for 38 years. We've tried many different things, sandbags, rubber things against the wall. The way we do it right now is pretty much the best way to do it that I know of. It's worked for, I mean, we one time set it up and we dumped the tanker where it's a fire halt on it. And it looked really nice. It froze up, but as soon as somebody stepped on it, they broke through it because the water underneath found a way out because there was too much water there. So the best way is just thin coats over and over and over.
And we also checked with Indian Lake, they had the same problem, they couldn't get their ice skate because they used the same idea on the in the lake, so it's not.
Yeah, we're not alone. It's not unique.
Right. And then every time they pack snow, it would melt. because
Yeah, and it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful that we haven't had it. I really, we tried to do it before Christmas so that it's all set up, but it's just, we had a January that was unbelievable.
the weather.
I understand. Okay.
But we are trying and we are working on it, and I think, well, JR said he's got about that much ice on there. He says there's a couple,
It's about an inch.
yeah, a couple bare spots yet, but it's building up and he's gonna be down there tonight again and tomorrow morning and throughout the week, so.
I think it was down there when I came by.
So we should have it open here.
Okay,
I'll probably set the timer and turn on the lights and stuff tomorrow. And we'll just put a couple cones out on the bare spots, and as it builds up, we'll take the cones away.
great. So Roger, would you like to do the fleet equipment or the 5-year plan first?
That's up to you. You're the
Let's do
boss.
the 5-year plan. Not many people say that about me.
Okay,
Okay,
sealing the pavilion is my plan for next year. Some of the stuff we've already done. The roof repair, the contractor couldn't find anything wrong with it. I think it only builds up when the pine needles plug the drains and then the drains overflow. He went up on the roof. He said he didn't find any soft spots, didn't find any holes or anything. And it hasn't been leaking other than when we have a heavy rain and the drains are plugged.
is there anything that can be done to keep the drains free of the?
Well, I have the guys go up there before winter and take all the pine needles and stuff out there. But they cut down that one tree, so I'm hoping, because we haven't had any issues as of late, and that one tree is gone with all the pine needles, so I'm thinking we may be. I mean, there still is another big tree there, but it's toward the back more, so I think we maybe cured the problem somewhat, but not 100%, I'm sure.
Okay,
Okay, and the panic bars have been installed. The tower work has been done.
mhm.
Well, I just left that open for, just in case there's a future, yeah, just in case.
And we
Okay.
still have a gazebo issue with the floor. I haven't figured out exactly how we're gonna fix that yet. Cause there's cement all the way up and there's 4 piers right in the center. So I don't know how we can cut them down or how we're gonna. I'm gonna have to talk to somebody that does stuff like that. 'Cause I have,
I'm trying to find the guy that jacks up the buildings, you know. does it-
Oh. Yeah, that those panels are being developed. So we should have those by spring, that's all.
and most of the bathroom updates have been done, other than at the firehouse. We're in the process of doing that now, peeling up tiles and painting. We're working on one at a time, so there's one bathroom closed down there.
Okay, and there's no upgrades, the upgrades to the bathrooms?
Just toilets.
We just have to install the 3 toilets. Everything else is good.
Okay. So if we can modify that to include the firehouse, the pavilion and the bathhouse.
Does.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Where does it say that?
Right here. Firehouse, pavilion, bathhouse.
Firehouse, pavilion. I'm not seeing. You have it on what? Oh, mine doesn't have that in the copy that I was given. Heck, stop the share. Okay, good.
Okay, and our 25-year plan or 2025, not 25.
Yeah, not 25 years.
We're looking to install another steel structure over to the garage for equipment and whatnot. Repaint the pavilion, basketball court, repave or recoat, not sure which we have to do yet. And baseball field, do some repairs on that and bring in some more clay and repave Gilmantown Road.
Great. So just bear in mind that very kindly, Deerfoot Lodge is going to send down some kids again for a day prior to beach opening and things like that. So some of this work can be helped.
And then in 25 and 26, we're still looking on the parking area. Haven't decided what we're gonna do. I've got a couple notes on that here. And adding a wash bay to the structure that we've thinking about putting up maybe. And that's about it, I guess.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I'm just wondering about the wash bay. I thought we had an agreement with.
We do. We can use the town's wash bay anytime we want,
We thought we were still,
but
we're on sewer, so we can just run into it. Because they move their water to us.
yeah, after
We
their thing
get
comes
their
up, they
water.
pump it out and they bring it down to us. So it would just be more convenient, but it's not something that, absolutely,
We're expensive cost.
yeah.
And then we tear down a couple old sheds, we tear them down and probably.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if we can go through the fleet and the equipment. Am I not
Okay,
on the right?
Yeah, the only thing we really added to that is, moved up the new, 2500 one. Yeah. And we have priorities, for, replace.
And that's in the process right now.
We're still waiting for it, so that's why it's on one. And the, rack body truck for next year. And then hopefully the year after, John Deere, backhoe, we may run to release that instead of purchasing it.
And then we've got one with a asterisk that's still the old snow machine. We're thinking about maybe putting that on auction international and getting something to replace it for our, that we can use more than just winter.
I have old versions of this.
Yeah, you don't.
I think you might have opened the first one we sent, not the updated one.
My apologies.
We don't have the roads in here, but I think the only thing in the roads is.
Gilmantown Road.
Gilmantown Road.
Everything else is pretty much up to date.
Yeah, that's why we put it on here, because just to show that we're going to move the chips on there.
Roger, just on the record, is it, I mean, the fire department has a new vehicle that they use for rescue.
Yeah, close to that.
Can it be shared?
No.
I don't think they would want us to take that in
I'm
there.
just inquiring.
Yeah, because we're carrying chainsaws and stuff. And
I already asked.
You did?
Okay, I didn't know. Sure.
And I think there was another page to this 5-year plan, just the second page.
I don't,
No, it's
not
no,
together.
we put it on one page, like Tracy put it all on one page.
This was on the second page, and I smushed it on there.
I think there's something about, what you call the, culverts on Elmwood Road, the 2 5-foot culverts.
Oh, yes, those within the next.
That was on there.
Last I checked them, those culverts are in really good shape, but they've been in for 38 years. I think that's the first project, one of the first projects we worked on was putting them in when I came to work. But sooner or later, their galvanized pipe, they're gonna rust out at the bottom. And so the 5 or maybe even 10-year plan, they might last 10 years. would be to put, open bottom culvert there like we did on Marion Avenue on those two. When we do that, then you don't have to worry about replacing them because the bottom's over.
Yeah, that
Rot-
was
rot out.
about $80,000, but that's a chip on it.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Any comments or questions for Roger at this point?
Well, I have my Pro Plus.
Oh, yes. So I did ask Roger if he can give us some estimates for, again, how we fix the parking lot. So as you know, we have a DEC grant that should be reading out soon, whether we, they will help us pay for an engineer for that area, whether is there regrading that should be done? Is there a green structure that we can qualify for grants? Is there something to facilitate that? So Roger and I met with Lenny Crute from Soil and Water and discussed one option. And that
that's
option
called-
is?
That's called Pro Plus, and it's plastic pavers. They're 24 by 24 by almost 2 inches, 1.8. And you dig out the whole section, you put 6 or 8 inches of stone, depending on how much water you want it to filter away. He said if you put 6, it's gonna filter away a 2.3 inch storm. If you put 8, it'll do a little bit over 3. But that is very pricey to do the 24 or the 28,000 square feet is almost $70,000. And then to get the stone, the number 2 stone and the number 1 stone is another almost $20,000, and the fabric is $5,000, which comes up to almost $84,000, and that's not even counting the contractor to do it. So that would be a very expensive plan for a puddle.
For a big puddle.
For a big
Yeah.
puddle, yes, there's no doubt. So I've come up with a couple other options.
Great.
We could have a contractor come in and grade that parking lot so that the water drains and pave it, which would probably be half this cost by the time you have the contractor added to it. Or we could dig 3 to 4 trenches, different directions, and fill with stone and fabric and let it drain on its own.
So do the same sort of thing, only on a small
Only
scale.
on a smaller scale, but it's a tough situation because it's so low there compared to the swamp. Because sometimes when we get heavy rain and the river goes backwards, the water is as high as the parking lot, so.
Yeah.
So no matter how much you put there, if the water gets too high, it's still gonna have water in the parking lot, I assume.
Mhm.
I'm not a engineer, but I would think if the water gets so high that. But there is other options to drain it faster. What we have now, the little drain we put in, I think it was last year, it might have been the year before, that works, but it takes it a while because the water has to slowly, and then it starts to plug up because it's just a small, it was only like the width of a backhoe bucket. But if we make these wider, and you still have to be worried about sand, which we usually don't sand down there because the snow machiners don't like the sand anyway in that parking lot. We only do if it gets so slippery that you can't. But the sand will plug up your stone if you put too much sand on there, and then it's not gonna filter as good. But if you make them wider and deeper, I would think it would work. Just a couple ideas I have. I don't know if that's the way to go, but I would think that would be the cheaper option.
Is he okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate that. And this week it'll be running with snow, a lot of snow this week.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, we have another storm coming in Wednesday.
yes, okay.
You say that.
Sort of.
No, actually, I agree we need snow, but I'm just getting sick of pushing that stuff around.
Well, I would like you to hang for just a second, because if I may, I would like to go down to the 80K grant proposal option for generous acts. So this is the 80K Foundation. These are a group of private investors who love the Adirondacks and want to see it thrive and do great things. So there are three basic areas that they're putting out requests for grants. And in another section of grants, they actually gave us $10,000 for the McComas Fire Tower, for which we are grateful. So these three areas are basic needs. So that's food, shelter, whatever, educational pathways and economic educational pathways. So things, you know, related to schools and training and skills training and things like that, which is sort of out of our purview. And then there's economic vitality and civic engagement. So that aspect is a bucket. I had given you a handout just to note some of the things that they have done. So these are opportunities, economic opportunities, attract and retain residents and businesses, inspire civic engagement. They seek to invest in community-led initiatives to enhance quality of life, fuel the economy, support the workforce development, business sustainability, retain residents, encourage visitors to move here, and more. So with that in mind, I called them as well as spoke to our planner at the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board and tossed around some ideas of parking lots and improving those sorts of things that they thought was pretty boring, that's not something that Adirondack Foundation would do. And then I mentioned the potential for an easy ice rink. And the reason why they said that that was a good one, and that might be our best option for a grant, is that it promotes structured youth activities during winter months through hockey clinics. And so we have Eric Holvig, was he semi-pro or?
Yes, he's full-time pro here, European.
So
pro.
he was a European hockey pro who donates a lot of his time with Christian Plug, I think, comes up, and a few of his buddies. Eric has also secured significant donation of equipment and jerseys, et cetera, for the kids from Woolman Rink when it was shut down in New York City. And it would be another attraction to bring people to the area and support local businesses, of course, because if you stay, you eat, you need a place. So Jim, you had.
Yeah, the easy rink that would fit in there perfectly would be, I believe the rink right now is 99 feet. I measured it. I think it's 47 feet across.
Right.
So the issue would be, you could get a 45 foot by 95 foot with a liner. And Roger, to your point, quite honestly, they told me the liner has to
be replaced
every year. So that type of thing. It would probably hold ice a little faster, and it would present a much smoother piece of operation, and
there wouldn't be the runoff into the stream every time.
We wouldn't get the runoff using the technique that works, the microfill. That's, I think it would be the way to go. And they have a proposal. It's $10,060 for the rink that size. And we would be entitled to a 15% discount, bringing it down to $8,500 and change, with a cost every year of a little bit less than $900 for replacement of the liner. So I think that would be something that would be very, very, very nice. And yeah, I'd be in favor of that. So
what do you think about that?
I think anything that would help, but the bottom line is, no matter what you get, you still have to have the cold weather.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. I mean, you could put lots of water down there, but if you don't have the weather to freeze it, so.
Would that save us anything in manpower? Evidently, they do an
probably.
advertisement that 80-year-old people can put it together in 2 hours.
Jim, just me and Roger did it too. So you probably want to put a 40 by 80 in there. So that way you can walk around the outside of it if you wanted to.
Or if you had to.
Make it too wide, it's just going to be.
It'll be hard to put together if you can't get it all the way around the edges of it, I'm sure.
And then that way people could walk around and get, of course, nets for it and things like that. Just be aware, I believe I just calculated based on, I don't know how many 4 inches, it was 24,000 gallons of water for that, that 4 inches of ice, because that's, you're gonna need more ice there than what he needs because of the line. So at least 4 to 6 inches of ice. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
So that'd be a lot of flooding before we can open it up too, so that would be another issue.
well, I think, to be honest with you, it would be the same amount of time if you have cold weather, whether you use those boards or the packed snow technique. It's almost the same.
Yeah, well, no, that's in a couple hours. You can
Yeah, it
install
was yeah, and, yeah,
And they say it freezes faster. I don't-
yeah.
I don't
And then
know.
if we don't have snow, we have boards, so we have cold.
Yeah, that's the
And
best
they
part
can
about it,
still
is you
skate,
don't need
like,
the snow.
You don't need the snow.
Yeah.
But,
There are years when we've had cold Novembers.
yeah,
We had cold Novembers that we could have got away, but we didn't have the snow. So that's the one advantage that I see, is the only advantage I see over your proven method.
right. And the only disadvantage I see is you have to have lots of ice on there before you let anybody skate on it.
And the liner.
Yeah, because it'll rip the liner if you don't, if the liner, if you only have a little bit of ice, the liner doesn't adhere to the ground, so the ice will crack and you go through. That's what happens.
Basically the 1 foot pans, and then you spread the line over it. And then the straps to connect everything, so it doesn't.
You've seen the straps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is I would think that would necessitate us doing the sealing sooner rather than later. So that you plan on the sealing this spring.
Well, one of the reasons the ceiling was for the ice.
Yeah.
So regardless, we would.
Yeah.
We do.
All right.
Is it pretty level in there?
It looks really level until you put water on it, and then you can see the spots at the top. There is a couple low spots that takes a while to build up, so it's not completely level now. But it's not really bad, but there is a
But,
couple.
and you won't get really level with the system we're talking, the easy ice, easy rain. You won't get completely level either. That's built basically for a yard.
Right,
But that notwithstanding, I do think it goes, and they have record of it, even though it says home rink, they do have record of towns and villages all over the Northeast, all over the country, the north part of the
Right.
country that uses it.
So, so this is the way it plays out in my head, is that, we can write a grant to Adirondack Foundation to see if they would support this. And if they do, fantastic. And if they don't, we'll have refinished pavement and we'll find another way.
And may I request, I gave it bargain basement price at 10,000. That means round corners and only sides at the very end.
right.
I think we should submit a proposal for the big picture. Put it in for 20, and if we get 14, then we got 2 corners and some sides. So that's the
Yeah,
way I propose it.
so with the Adirondack Foundation, the small grants range from 2,500 to 7,500. And then larger grants that invest in long-term change, which I think we can argue this is, they can range from $10,000 to $20,000. So,
So I think I would propose the long-term for the 20. And I would propose that in our budget, we would allow $1,000 every year going forward.
For
a new
the,
line.
for the line. Right.
That's it. You don't like that, I know.
I hate maintenance, or costly maintenance. Well, at this point then, may I have a motion to proceed with applying for an Adirondack Foundation Generous Acts grant in support of an ice rink, seeking to obtain a $10,000 grant with all those
I said
points.
20,000. I said
Well,
yes.
whatever the prices that we would put in.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, second, any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so I will have that in by February 1st. Thank you, Roger.
All right.
And,
Now tell me how to do your business.
No, I'm not offended at all.
You know, I'm telling you how to do your business.
That's her job. Her job.
Thank
No,
you.
like I said, anything that works, that's great.
Oh, and as an aside, our grant writer, our planner, said that she would take a look at the grant before submitting it to make sure we have all the Ts crossed and Is dotted. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Mrs. Crystal O'Brien, Clerk Treasurer. Have a good night, Roger. Sorry it's so late.
Try to keep this quick,
Okay.
'cause I think we all want to go home soon.
You can hope all you want.
After having our financial meeting last week, I took a closer look at our utility costs for this year. It was, during our meeting, it was discussed that our utility costs seem to be excessive, not only in the cost department, but the usage as well. Looking back to pre-COVID usage, it looks like we're still averaging or forecasting to a relatively normal range, both in cost and usage. Utility or electricity was the highest that we were looking at, but that seems to be looking okay as well. Diesel is another one area where we're going to be keeping an eye on, because that's,
If I can make a comment about electricity,
yes.
because something that we have taken pains to do is to replace our lighting with LED lighting, both here, the garage, the water plant, and also our traffic lights.
Yes.
I mean, the street lights, sorry.
The fire department was.
And the fire
has done
department.
The pavilion.
Yes.
Those were changed to LEDs. as
Yep.
well, yeah. So pretty
So
much all of our buildings.
The only things that have not been done are the decorative lights, which are prohibitively expensive to replace to LEDs. And I forgot to ask about the ones that are out. Anyway, so looking at that and the usage, the kilowatt hour usage for all of that has come down. However, our kilowatt usage has gone up in the village wastewater treatment plant because of the new equipment that's in there. And so that's something that we've known. So what we've done is we've balanced out our usage so it stayed consistent, even though we're using more in the wastewater treatment plant. But the prices are still going through the roof. with
Prices
fuel.
all around are still going through the roof. Luckily, we did a good job last year budgeting for a good increase, and we've stayed, hopefully we'll stay within
A question for you.
close range of that.
If you look at your home bill, they'll say the kilowatt hour is now 20 cents.
Yes.
And then there's a sub thing that minus either 7 cents or 9 cents.
Mhm.
Does the village get that break too?
It depends on what bills we're looking at. We have like 17 different accounts with National Grid. So, there are some pluses and minuses to each one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I want to know.
Yeah. All right, second, I do have some nice little charts if anybody wants to look at.
No.
They're beautiful charts.
Not tonight.
Those were beautiful. I saw them.
Okay, so,
The resolution?
I have a resolution for budget adjustments for attorney fees due to the unexpected need to hire a lawyer who specializes in unions and that added expense. The financial committee is recommending to move the $9,000 budgeted for auditing. We are predicting that we'll be doing the low step audit probably in May, probably later May. So we'll budget for that to be taken out in June in the next budget year. And then, so that auditing fee budget of $9,000 to be moved to the attorney fees budget line.
Okay. May I have a motion to pass the resolution for budget adjustment? Mark? Second?
Sure.
Rebecca, any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Motion carries. Thank you. And so Now, a motion to approve abstract number, what number are we on? 15. May I have a motion? Rebecca, second. Mark? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Motion to approve financial report number 7. We're still flush, which is good. Mark, and second? Jim Rumsey, thank you. Any questions or comments? Right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Crystal, thank you. Okay, going through old business, septic system and erosion regulations. The village attorneys provided us with a sample law to reconsider regarding the transfer of property with regards to septic systems, that they're adequate and useful. So Trustee Doniker and I will be going through that and see if that's something that would be appropriate for the village. Next is a short-term rental committee, the joint committee with Lake Pleasant. They have not met yet.
We meet this week.
Oh, you meet this week, okay? So what I would like to request is in there, if short-term rental would extend to RVs.
Is that a question?
That is a question that I would like to ask that committee, because if you're looking on what to do with short-term rentals as far as properties go, is there something that should be considered with renters?
And then I'll request a timeline.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay,
The question is, will all those other people be there?
no, not at that meeting. That's a closed committee. So they're coming up with proposals on, is there anything, should we do anything with Airbnbs and VRBOs? I mean, are there noise? I mean, when you look at Indian Lake, they've proposed no noise ordinances, holding property owners responsible. I mean, there's quite a long list of things that they're looking into, because not everyone is a nice renter.
Okay.
But then the question arises, is that something you need to?
And I also asked the question, is it wise for the town and the village to go together on examining this, or why doesn't the whole county go together? I mean, this in all the different towns. And maybe not some of the superintendents are that swift, but I just wonder if maybe, I'm sorry, this is public record? I'm sorry. Can you delete that? Okay. All right.
All right, so that's something that we could bring up with the chairman, Brian Wells from Indian Lake. All right, thank you for that. Let's jump down to general codes update. So the codes, as I had mentioned earlier, the codes are under review. What the general code reviewer has done is they've gone through our local laws, state laws, county laws, our general codes, to make sure that they're all consistent, and has raised any discrepancies or contradictions and things like that. So we've reached out to the appropriate stakeholders for specific questions, such as those related to wastewater treatment plant, water and sewer laws, flood plains, that we've reached out to the DEC because they haven't been updated since 2001. Once those changes are made, and changes that were proposed but never implemented, updates, a lawyer will go through that and advise us on those changes, and if there are any laws that need to be repealed, etc. So in conjunction with that, since it has a lot to do with zoning with the land use code, I would suggest that the village plans and appropriately budgets to update and overhaul, do a serious overhaul of the land use code, as well as the village comprehensive plan. So those things kind of go hand in hand, and one dictates the usage of lands within the village, as well as the comprehensive plan aids us in applying for grants. So that hasn't been updated in quite some time. Okay. Next is the Teamsters Union update. Last week, our attorney, Jay Gervin, and I met with the public virtually by phone met with the Public Employment Relations Board judge, the PERB judge, and the Teamsters Union representatives regarding a request to recognize the Teamsters Union to represent the employees for the purpose of collective negotiations. Because more than 50% of the employees signed the union cards, the judge is permitting this to move forward without a secret ballot and issued a consent agreement, which was signed by the union and village attorneys. So the next step is to go into negotiation, and that will be the subject of executive session, a brief executive session. Okay, new business, real property tax law 466, the proposal for opt-in property tax exemption for EMS and fire. So Trustee Doniker and I met to discuss the proposal of opting in for the property tax exemption for the EMS and firefighters. And I also exchanged emails with Supervisor Bain regarding the position that the Lake Pleasant board was taking. So Lake Pleasant and the Village of Speculator were in agreement that eligible volunteer ambulance workers, EMS workers who have met the eligibility criteria for 2 or more years could apply for a 10% exemption on their taxes. So that would be for Village of Speculator residents, and then they would do it for the town of Lake Pleasant.
Say it again. So it's 10% from.
So we're recommending to the board,
Okay.
10%, 2 year, you have to meet a 2-year criteria, and then you would have to meet eligibility criteria every year that you would apply for it. So this would not apply to people who do not own their own home, who are not using it as a primary residence. You can't rent it out to other people. That's gotta, be your number one. So there has been discussion about firefighters and whether they should be included in this exemption. And our initial thought is to not include the volunteer firefighters because of the state mandated long-term incentives they receive in the amount of $700 each year, that they meet eligibility criteria. So they don't have a 2-year wait before they get $700 each year that they meet their criteria within the calendar year. And what the village did to provide an added benefit to our firefighters, originally you get it as a retirement. So 65 and older, you would be able to collect $10 or $5, was it $5 or $10 per month per year? So you'd get so the under the old system, it was $5, $10 per month per year served, and that's the stipend you would get each month. And so what the village did by referendum either last year or the year before is that we lowered that collection age from 65 to 55, and we allowed it to be taken as a lump sum instead of a monthly payment, so that the firefighters could use it perhaps to do something for the retirement, or do college tuition for their kids, or something that it would make it much more useful. Thereafter, we provide our eligible firefighters $700 annually. So anyone over 55, we give them $700 annually to use in a manner of their choosing. So that was our rationale for why we would do one over the other. So there has been some feedback, word on the street that has to come in public for us to consider, or in writing, why we should consider adding firefighters, giving them an additional benefit. Any thoughts or?
If they're getting a benefit, then EMS is not, then we should just make them equal.
So give EMS $700 a year.
Take property tax.
Well,
Yeah,
property
but I
tax,
mean,
I did a
what
rough look, and the folks who are serving on SFAC who live in the village, no one really pays more than $3,000 in taxes. So it'd be about $300. But if your house is in trust, you don't get that benefit.
Well, the thing about that though, many houses are in trust only because of the age of the firefighters or the age of the ambulance worker
Mhm,
and their attorneys want it that way.
mhm.
But they're still the property owner, even though you're in trust. You own the trust until you die.
Well, then I'd have to double check with the laws in New York State because that's not the way it's written. That's not the way it's written. So, or that's not the way I was led to interpret it, but we can double check. But if we are in agreement with that, it would, before anything is determined, we'll write up a draft law. It goes to public hearing. So, so at the next meeting, I'll put that back on the table. And any firefighters or people who have an opinion in that regard should come forward and give their input. So there will be a public notice for that.
So public hearing would not be for another month.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just to-
So the proposed law would come in 2 weeks at our next meeting. And then if we're all in agreement with that, then it would go to public hearing. Okay. So would someone make a motion that will progress to provide 10%? Mark, second, for EMS, 2-year eligibility. So I'm sorry. Yeah. That we progress that way to at least draft the law. So, well, what I would like to put on the table is to do public notice that Trustee Jim Rumsey and myself are both EMS workers. Cindy Rumsey is married to a EMS worker. According to NICOM, we will submit a letter to that regard, and then we would still be able to vote on it. But that has to be full disclosure. So Jim, Cindy, and I will submit letters to the board stating what our relationship is, and we'll clarify the bit
Now,
about
if-
trust.
If that issue of the in trust negates our involvement, then both Cindy and I can
Correct,
vote.
correct. Yeah, so we'll check
Makes
on that.
sense?
So did you do that motion? Like, was that motion?
Well, this is the discussion part, yeah. So a motion to draft up a law for discussion at the next time.
She just
period.
seconded. We are doing.
We did you said we don't need it
Motion to draft a local law, you need a motion to move it to like.
to a public
move it to
hearing.
public hearing.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page moving forward and that disclosures are noted.
So never mind the motion.
Don't do a motion.
Okay. That's all I needed to know.
We'll do an anti-motion.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that. We talked about the Adirondack grant proposal, lifeguards. So lifeguards were an issue last year. They were an issue throughout New York State. We need lifeguards. We need trained lifeguards. So I was approached by 2 young ladies in the village asking if we would support them getting their license because why? Because the cost of the program is $310 for a full class. So what I would like to suggest to people who are looking, these young people who are looking to do it, that the village, as we do for recertifications, we would pay for half of the full class up front. Certifications, as per this, is $125. So if we paid half of the $310 for the first year, and then if they came back a second year, the incentive would be that we could pay for the second half.
We've always budgeted to reimburse. We would just need proof of like
That they passed.
that they passed their class, like a receipt that they were.
For recertification or for initial training? Because the
We
initial
have- we
training is
have-
twice as much.
We have budgeted, well, in the past, we've budgeted for training as well.
Training as well.
Yeah.
And have we done any incentive? So, well, it's pretty easy to pay for training and then they never come back. Or they
Well,
quit
no, we
part
don't-
way.
we don't pay for it up front. We reimburse.
When do we reimburse?
After they,
Complete the summer?
complete, and I don't think we ever had anything specifically written up.
So
but
I would
it
suggest we
was
reimburse when the summer is finished.
the full amount.
For,
I rent the full amount.
you would do the full amount for training?
Sure.
I mean, if it's gonna
they
get
stay to the end,
people to come.
they say the end, I say the full amount. Because we've already budgeted it.
Well, we would budget it for for
A
the
written
coming year,
agreement
but
that
yes.
They have to work till that day.
Well, yeah, depending on if they're college students, like they're usually go back to.
Yeah, these are 2 high schools. These
But
are
if they were.
maybe 3 high
So
schools.
maybe if we had a written agreement that said that they work for at least, like. at
For the
least
summer.
The summer,
Yeah.
yeah, season, July and August,
That's a fine,
however,
reimbursement right away.
yeah.
But can they?
At the end of the
afford to
season.
get the training? I mean, do they need it up front to get the training?
Yeah, but to Jeanette's point, there's no way.
There's
we
no
guarantee
incentive.
No, I
if
agree
we,
fully with
like,
an incentive.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee that they're gonna pass.
yeah.
So we're saying that they go and they pass and they work a year, then they get full.
That summer, right?
Well, they work. the
And we'll
summer,
pay
they
for the
spend
full
it
training
first.
amount at the end of summer. And hope they'll come back the next year. Otherwise, we're training a lot of lifeguards to go out into the world. But I'll take 2 lifeguards. Well, that's the other thing. I'd like to make sure that we start advertising now. DEC is already advertising for lifeguards.
Everybody in the village is advertising for someone else.
Right, right.
Yeah.
The DEC,
Might as well too.
is DEC paying the training?
Yeah, they're doing training and everything now.
Are they?
Yeah.
Because New York City is paying the training too.
Okay, and the cost of lifeguards. Yeah. So our salary for lifeguards, we increased?
Last year, we were budgeting about $14. I haven't looked at what,
Oh, there's,
does anybody know off the top of their head what minimum wage is right now?
well,
Because we have.
DEC last year was paying $25 an hour. Excuse me? Was there a comment on Zoom?
Well, I hope that's not.
So, okay, someone wasn't on mute.
Yeah, I don't know what DEC is offering.
Yeah, I think we need to,
Well, that would be all part of our budget process.
Mark, you're not on mute.
I apologize.
That's okay. Yeah, I think we need to see what competitive salaries are, because
Yeah.
it's not gonna fly with 14.
Well, no, I mean, that's what we were gonna pay last year, but.
Right. Well, I thought,
Well,
well,
we would be, so we haven't even, this is our beginning, the very beginning of our budgeting season
Right.
anyways, so,
Yeah, the payments will come next budget. so
yeah, yeah.
We should make sure that we pay them well, that we're fairly
Yeah.
competitive with the state.
But
right.
ideally, you don't want just high school students.
Well,
I mean,
no,
we might have a choice, but.
I
Well,
contacted
the-
somebody who's,
A little bit older, who's 2 years.
Okay.
we've had, in the past, we've had just high school students as well.
Okay.
In addition, there might be an
Overseas,
in addition, there might be an opportunity for J1 visa students. But I'd have
Let me ask you
to,
this, is there also, are you here, I mean, do you know for a fact you have to recertify every year?
yes,
You do. have to
you do.
recertify.
Yep.
You have to CPR recertify every year.
CPR.
You have
Yeah,
to
we can get
do
that- we can get that
your,
through SFAC.
and you have to do your lifeguard certification every 2 years.
Okay, so my comment would be to draw people back, give a bonus if they come back and stay a second year, and give them the recertification fee that you normally would do, and have that ready for them.
So pay up front if they're gonna return.
Yes,
For the
so if they
recertification.
return, then when their last paycheck of their end of their second year gets a recertification fee. And then we would pay the recertification fee, so basically you're paying, but you're paying twice, if you will, but at least we get some redundancy.
Okay, so we would pay them, we would reimburse them their first season, and then as an incentive to come back the next year, we would pay for their CPRE
If
certification.
they come back, if
Yeah.
not, the process starts again.
And I
And give
think
them
it's
give them a
worth
couple $100 bonus too,
offering.
for coming back a second year.
I don't think we can legally give bonuses.
We can't do that.
You do.
We
Not-
can't
we're a
legally do
municipality.
bonuses, But,
So unless you're gonna take over the beach as private, we are restricted, Jim.
but we can pay for research.
For training.
And for training. Which for these high school students or college students. Right. Would be beneficial.
And last year, we posted in all the high schools, BOCES,
We sent.
YMCA.
things out to all of the local high schools, we sent stuff out, we sent stuff to, I called, yeah, Tracy called. YMCA. We, you know, we even went as far as Poland, Johnstown,
Depends really on the scale.
yeah.
That would be aggressive.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Well, and last year lifeguards were down
Yeah.
drastically, all over
Everywhere.
the country, it wasn't just here.
So I think that, you know, perhaps if we go beyond Northville, we offer mileage. Is that possible? Would that be, I mean,
We offer mileage for other employees.
right,
But I don't know,
If
I
you
think
make
if you're,
scales,
if we're paying them $25 an
Oh,
hour, like,
yeah, then
That's,
they can pay for their
I
gas.
think
you
you
know-
just need that represented.
Right.
what The town's gonna pay, the city's gonna pay.
Yeah.
to make up the money.
Right.
yeah. All lifeguard for the summer. We don't need to work in here, right?
Now, this meeting is going to.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, so we're doing that, and then we'll come back with salaries and things like that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So then moving on to the board roundtable session, we were notified about a week or two ago that the Chamber of Commerce was not doing the Community Pride Day sponsorship, so they would organize the groups. However, we have an update. Yes, so we're very happy to report that there are board members on the chamber who are going to take on that responsibility. So I was notified that the person in charge of the Chamber of Commerce is relocating, so they're leaving the area and a search will be on for a Chamber of Commerce person, but Steve Stefano and Marty Zegstrud were going to take up the charge. Did you hear more?
Well, I also offered to help out a little bit, as much as I could do possibly here, but then on my off time as well, and I know, Stephanie Smith said that she would.
Terrific.
So, Miss Eldridge is leaving the area? Relocating?
Yes.
Wow.
I don't know her timing, but yes, I'm very sad.
And her sister?
I don't know.
Public meeting, move on.
Public meeting.
Okay.
Easy. Okay, so next up is a cross-country snowmobile race was postponed and is now, the new date is
February 11th.
February 11th. So with the snow and the cold outside, it's looking good. So everybody do their snow prayers. And then I did want to make the board and the village aware of a plan that has been issued by Governor Hochul about housing, a housing compact. This is it. Okay. So one of the key proposals announced by Governor Hochul during her State of the State address is a New York housing compact. So bottom line, they would put in statewide housing targets. And this would be targeting 3% new home target over 3 years, including New York City. And for municipalities in upstate counties such as ourselves, the new home target would be 1% over 3 years. And if you did not meet those targets, New York State would come in and rezone. They would supersede your zoning laws to make it happen. I think you would get a pass the first time and then not after that. So I'd like to see them try, but they would create zoning capacity to achieve the growth targets. So I just want to put that out there. NICOM is actively lobbying against that, especially in light of the fact that we are in a state where people are leaving by the droves. So it seems counterintuitive to have those things down. All right, and so at this point, I would like to close the public meeting and have a motion to go into a brief executive session.
Okay.
Mark and Rebecca. Thank you. I think my office is open if you, or you can
Does
go
that mean
home.
we should come back in?
No, no.